Okay, it's 1:12 p.m. and it is the 10th of April. News-wise, it's been a fairly quiet morning as far as Twitterverse twittering. Hasn't been a whole lot of any real note. Interesting but unimportant. Last night, someone put out an old poll, old CBS poll when President Obama's rating was at 66%, and it was posted along with a few other posts that were maybe from the same period, but probably more current. And I retweeted it, and then a lot of people retweeted it. And then one of the right-wing bigot Tea Party people, one of the ones with the big following, said it was an old post and blah blah blah. And I looked at it, and sure enough, it was an old post. And this morning I had a liberal, with the Road to Recovery thing on their icon, the Road to Recovery graph, and they were like, "Are you on drugs?" and blah blah blah, and blah, blah, blah. And it irritated me, for the sheer fact that they don't do that, man. For all their bad qualities, even if they disagree with each other, they'll say it. They won't act it out. They'll say, "Oh, I don't agree with such and such," but they're not gonna go snipping and sniping at each other. That kind of thing. But our people definitely are not like that. They don't operate that way, and so forth and so on. But I gave the person, I said something to him, because I just basically said that, it's a problem on the left with, people that have the moral current of vipers, and the right wingers just, they don't do stuff like that. They don't express their disagreements or their and plus, just any little thing, any little thing. And it's just like, and people on the left are just so willing to, to be disrespectful to one another and to turn on one another, just like that. And so, I understand the argument against that we're not like lockstep soldiers and we're free to have our opinions and blah, 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 but saying to another person, "Are you on drugs?" is a little, come on, man. That's a little bit more than just, expressing your opinion or in a disagreement. Just like, and that was a liberal. And opinions and free to express opinions and all of that kind of stuff is all well and good, but at the same time, in a struggle, the freedom thing can be respected, but let's face it, in a struggle, you want to win. Inside, it's like they stick together, and that's one of the reasons why they stick together, and corporate America supports them. Those two things. That's a big deal. That's a lot. That's a lot. That's why they win so often, despite the fact that their numbers, and they're winning often enough that America is just becoming conservative, and conservative does not mean conservative. Conservative have nothing to do with the word conservative, because so-called conservatives in the last 10 years have been anything but conservative. They're not conservative. It's a euphemism. It means what Rosalind Carter said that it meant. It means bigoted. It means having a tendency towards bigotry, and we that is changing. America is not a melting pot, but a sifting pot where races that probably don't interact do. And not only that, there is an American mindset that when you come here to the United States and you raise kids, you may not get it, but your kid's gonna get it. If your kids get it, you get it. You get it because your kids get it. You get it because you work with other people in the American, working place. But nonetheless, there is still enough recognizable bigotry that is still a binding force in our society and its politics that is not a good thing. That's not going to get reinforced in a positive way by the force, by life. It just isn't going to, and it behooves us to do what we can to move beyond that. And it's not so much a matter of mandating that people do this, that, or the other, as people getting it in their heads that if they want to get what's good for them in the future, they need to learn to stick together with people who may have differences. They look different from them, but fundamentally want the same things in the long run. And it would be nice to think that the hardcore bigots that are the right-wing supporters would get that into their heads, since 90% of them are not wealthy. But I think that would be, asking a whole hell of a lot. Because they're the hardcore bigots. They're the ones who are the least psychologically inclined to hear any of that. I mean, the people who are so-called left are more psychologically and emotionally willing to look at those kind of things. Not that they're that much more, but they're enough to make that difference, which is what the party thing reflects. It doesn't reflect any ideas about economic policy and blah blah. Conservative doesn't mean conservative. Liberal doesn't mean that you give free. It doesn't mean that. Those things have just become, I don't know when they meant that or if they ever meant those things, but conservative does not mean fiscal conservative. Maybe it means supporting the status quo. Maybe. That even is doubtful. It's doubtful that it means that. And it's definitely, I'm certain that if it did once mean supporting the status quo, it's coming round to mean that less and less as it becomes, it being conservatism, as it becomes more and more a tool and an instrument for the amoral, irreligious, and totally indifferent, politically indifferent, moneyed elites. I'm not going to call them ruling elites because I don't think they have much interest in ruling, in governing. They're not like the old aristocracy who tolerated more or less, having to govern, which meant you had to be concerned about how you appeared to others at all times, because that's more or less what governing and ruling was, being, having a concern of how you look to others, so that, if you say something or do something, and it meant doing things in the interest of the state. You can't factor that out. But anyway, I think that's enough of that.